Up next, the governor of the Central Bank of Romania joins us for a live viewer call-in program. Mugur Isarescu heads the Romanian equivalent of the U.S. Federal Reserve and will discuss economic and political events in his country. He will also take your comments and questions about U.S.-Romanian relations.
Governor Mugur Isarescu of the Central Bank of Romania. How would you describe the degree of political stability in Romania today?
I can say that today the political situation in Romania is calmer than comparative with last year. But I can say in the same time that in my country remain some political tensions, some social tensions, and these are because of the peculiarities of our transition towards democracy and market economy. First of all, we passed an unfortunately bloody revolution, and you know what is blood is revenge. Secondly, it's the fact that last year it was a year of social and political unrest. My point of view is that the main cause is a lack of professionalism, not only on the economic scene, but also on political scene. The fact is that now the situation is calmer, and the tension moved from the political and social field in the economic field.
You are the governor or one of a few governors of the central bank. How does that work?
Not as the only governor. That actually we look to the Federal Reserve System of America like a model, drafting our banking bills. But actually Romania is a small to medium country, and there is only one national bank, and there is only one governor of the national bank.
So you're it?
I am.
What is the purpose of your visit to the United States?
Actually, it's a more private visit. I'm here, first of all, to inform some U.S. officials about the new phase of the economic reform in Romania.
All right, we will continue talking with the governor of the Central Bank of Romania. Let me tell you that we'll cover a number of subjects, notably the economic situation in Romania, and I'm sure he can address some of the other matters. But as you think about what you would say to him, you can use the numbers that appear on the bottom of your screen, and you can begin dialing now. Governor, who do you intend to, or whom have you already met with in this country that I guess in the form of official visits?
I was first of all in the Treasury Department. I was in the Federal Reserve System, and I was also on the Capitol Hill. And the discussion was focused on the fact that after we starting the economic reform, now we are focusing on three major elements. The first is that this summer we intend to almost totally liberalize prices in Romania. Secondly is that we'll start after the small privatization and land privatization will come to the field of, and most important, of big industrial enterprise privatization. And the third is that we'll intend to, in this fall, to have the last jump towards the convertibility of the national currency.
I have a note that you may have met with Alan Greenspan, is that right?
I was for a short meeting with Mr. Greenspan in the
And what did you talk about?
Exactly what I said.
And on Capitol Hill, who did you meet with?
I met several personalities like Senator Warner.
John Warner of Virginia.
Exactly. I've met Congresswoman Walker, and these are the most important.
What would you say is the ability of your country, especially in the wake of some of the political developments there, to receive economic assistance, if you've sought it, from members of the European community?
Actually, we agreed in this and signed in this winter standby agreement with IMF. And this agreement, which is in fact our economic program, the program for reforming, adjustment and stabilization of Romanian economy, is based on two major sources of finance. The first is the IMF financing, and the second is the G24 financing. Now, as the IMF, International Monetary Fund financing started, we are waiting for the financing from the G24. To my knowledge, the economic EEC, that is the European Community financing, is already committed. What remains is these non-EEC countries, which their commitment is up to now is not very clear.
Explain what G24 financing is.
G24 financing is the group of developed countries last year decided to help the transition process in the former communist countries, in Eastern and Central European countries. And G24 financing is financing for the purpose of balance of payments and for creating a kind of stabilization funds for the convertibility.
All right, let's take the first call for Governor Mugur Isarescu of Romania. Elmwood Park, New Jersey is first. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm curious to know why the Jews are so hated in Romania. Why are they still blamed for everything that goes wrong in Romania?
Caller, how do you, or what's the basis of that comment? Do you believe that that's the case in Romania?
On a piece in the Times the other day.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you.
The question was about the...
He has read newspaper accounts that say that in Romania the Jews are blamed for much of the economic condition or perhaps even political problems of Romania.
I can say that it is an exaggeration. Actually, generally in our history, the Jewish community was proved to be welcome, and they were in a very good position in my country. It's true that in the last time some newspapers started a kind of campaign, but there are only extremist newspapers. It's not a problem of anti-Semitism in Romania up to now.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the evolution of the government of, I guess, the post-revolution Romania. For example, the National Salvation Front. Is that the party currently in control of the government?
Exactly.
Are you a member of that party?
It's not exactly a member. There's this party was formed after the revolution. Is not a party with members, to be exact. It was not like during the communism when there were members of the party. Mm-hmm. But being part of the officials in my country, of course, I'm related with the National Salvation Front.
Were you a communist?
Before that is during the communists, exactly. I was like, there were more than 4 members of the party in Romania before.
Durham, North Carolina. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. Governor, either you are disingenuous or else you're telling us that the New York Times is a blatant liar. That's the article that appeared yesterday regarding virulent anti-Semitism. The entire Parliament passed a law honoring your own personal Hitler of the Second World War, the general, the leader who ordered deportations and pogroms against the Jews. If it happens, and it is happening, and it's the Main Street newspapers that are carrying anti-Semitism, it's not merely the fringe right. If it's going on, you do all of your people a disservice by trying to cover it up and sweep it under the rug by merely suggesting, oh, it's a slight problem. Talk continues about the Jewish problem and the Jewish solution in Romania. And for you to say otherwise, again, I say either you're disingenuous, I'll put it blatantly, you're lying, or the New York Times is lying. You tell me which. Thank you.
Frankly, I didn't see. I didn't read what's written in New York Times, and I was out of Romania for nearly 1 week. But to my knowledge, it's not a Jews problem in Romania now, and that's I'm a little bit disturbed of the events and about the question.
There was a prospect for a general strike last year, and it was put off because of some assurances, I guess, by the government. But I understand that there could be another general strike, or a real general strike, in July, in the shift toward a market-oriented economy. What is your assessment of whether or not the workers of Romania will respond to the economic reforms with a general strike very soon?
There is this danger of a strike and of social turmoil. And the main reasons are because, first of all, the road to a market economy proved to be plenty with pitfalls and hardships. And the population expected perhaps too much. They expected from the market economy to, first of all, the good signs of the market economy, that is, the markets to be plenty of goods. Perhaps we didn't explain, or it wasn't done a necessary effort to explain the other side of market economy, which is the high productivity, the good technology. That's the risk of the market economy, is inflation and unemployment. This is one element. The other element is that actually in Romania we're after a decade of, let me call it the decade of madness, that a lot of sacrifices was done in the 80s when Ceausescu paid back the foreign debt. And perhaps now in my country, more like comparative with other former communist country, the population are very sensitive to the hardships and to the difficulties. That there is this risk that the difficulties of the transition not to be supported by the population and specifically by the workers. Particularly is this fear about unemployment, because we inherited an aberrant structure of the industry with a lot of overdevelopment, oversizing of the industrial sector. And it's a necessity, a real necessity to start the restructuring of the economy, particularly of the industrial base. And then will appear unemployment.
Our guest is the governor of the Central Bank of Romania. He was ratified by the parliament in that post for a term of 8 years just a couple months ago, in March.
Not at all. It's not exactly.
No?
No, it's not exactly. Actually, we drafted the banking laws in the fall. The banking laws, that is the law on the banking activity, and the statute of the National Bank was debated in the parliament during the winter, was passed in March. It was promulgated in April and actually were enforced in May. And now the proposal for the board of the bank, including the proposal for the governor, is in the parliament. It's not yet passed by the parliament.
Oh, well, I think your biography ought to be amended. But nevertheless, also served as the Secretary of Economics for the Embassy of Romania here in Washington. So you've had some experience here before.
Yeah.
How long were you here?
I was here for 6 months. I was here for 6 months after the December Revolution. I was from March 80 up to September 80, and my first purpose here was to try to normalize the relations with International Monetary Fund and with the World Bank. Actually, it's a kind of irony of history that Romania was one of the first Eastern European countries. We joined IMF in '72, but in the decade of '80s, our relations with IMF were deteriorated during the period when we paid back the foreign debt, and it was necessary after December events to try to normalize relations with the IMF. It was a very difficult task, and I can say it was easier for Bulgaria to join IMF than for Romania to normalize the relations with IMF.
We've got half an hour to go with our guest. Lincoln, Nebraska is next. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am, you're on the air. And please turn down the volume of your television set, please.
Okay. I remember that one thing that came out in the news at the time of former dictator Ceausescu's execution. was that the foreign debt was all paid off,
Yeah.
most of it at the expense of the Romanian people. My question is to Mr. Isarescu, where does Romania stand today as far as foreign debt goes, considering the poor and decaying state of internal economy?
Actually, I can say that unfortunately up to now we have no foreign debt. And Ceausescu paid, exactly as you said, the foreign debt at a very high social and economic cost, isolating Romania from the technological point of view and with a lot of sacrifices for the population. After the events of December, we remain with from the bookkeeping point of view, with the international creditor position, that's no foreign debt. We claim nearly $3 billion in foreign assets, mainly in the Middle East, and with nearly $1 billion or more than $1 billion in foreign exchange reserves. Because last year we imported more than we exported, we financed this difference, the deficit on the current account, the deficit of balance of payments by depleting our foreign exchange reserves. That now the position of Romania is this: zero foreign debt. We still claim nearly $3 billion in foreign assets. Unfortunately, as I said, most of them were in Middle East, 1.7 frozen assets in Middle East, in Iraq assets, and no reserves, only the gold reserves.
One of the issues that many Americans are familiar with, because there's so many news stories about it, are Americans going over to Romania to adopt Romanian orphans. What is your perspective on that development?
Actually, I'm not in this field, to be very frank. I know it was developed to be a very shameful story for the Romanian people. For me, like the Romanian and like a parent of two children, all these stories about adoption is how to say, it's an unpleasant story. And I prefer to not to comment about it.
Is there a government policy with respect to those kinds of adoptions?
It was not a specific policy. What we inherited is that we inherited a very bad situation with a lot of orphanages. I recall that in January, after December events, when the first movie about these orphanages where I have seen on Romanian television, I was purely shocked, and all the Romanians were shocked. We didn't know what's happened there. And what was the main reason is that for more than 2 decades, Ceausescu promoted a really mad policy that is...
Well, Governor, my question is really, after all of that, and after the Americans began to come in to adopt, did the government change its policy regarding the ease of adoption?
To my knowledge, they try to ease the adoption, yes.
Okay. And is there any, do you have any personal opinion about the whole idea of Americans coming in and taking Romanian youth out of the country?
Frankly, I'm not in the field. I don't know exactly what is the situation.
All right. Huntington Beach, California. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'm not sure if you can comment on this. I was wondering about the revolution that took place. Unlike what happened in East Germany and Poland, it seems that some of the things we'd read about, like the atrocities at Timisoara and so forth, were just told to the people to get them riled, and that actually they were used just for a coup d'etat to change government so that the new government was more in sympathy with Moscow. I don't know if you can comment, but was there really a revolution there, or was it just a coup d'etat between one communist government and another?
There are a lot of rumors about what's happened in December, and I can say that being there, it was a popular explosion, and that is, I said, it was a bloody revolution with a lot of tolls. Now, about the government which was in Romania after this revolution, it's necessary to have a distinction between the transitory government, which was up to the election, and the government which was after the election. Actually, what can I say? What can I comment about this? This government was engaged in a very deep economic reform and also in a very deep political reform. Being in the economic field, I can say that we proceed very rapidly to make the new market mechanics, market reform, and specifically in my field, that's from last September when we started the banking reform, I can say that it was a lot of implementation. That from this point of view, I can say that this government is very committed to a market economy and to the democracy in Romania.
As you look at the situation in the Soviet Union, what advice would you give to them?
For me to advise the Soviet Union, it's very difficult to advise.
Well, based on your experience in Romania, do you think it's a good idea to go fast or go slow?
I can say that the best way is to have a bold and comprehensive approach to the transition. That's any gradualism, a very long gradualism, is very dangerous. And mainly, the most dangerous is this piecemeal approach, that not to look to the transition like a very correlated body, and to have only to look to the price liberalization without privatization and so on. That my advice, if I can give an advice, is to be bold and comprehensive, not to have a piecemeal approach to the transition, as rapidly as possible.
Chattanooga, Tennessee is next.
Yes, good evening, gentlemen. One comment in reference to the second caller tonight. I can assure you that the New York Times, as an American citizen, the New York Times is a liar in this case, not you, sir, by any stretch of the imagination. Number two, I'd like to ask you a little bit about our Federal Reserve System as compared to the central banking system in Romania. Our Federal Reserve System is a privately owned system, and all the banks, the member banks, own the Federal Reserve System. How does that compare to the Romanian central banker?
The comparison is that from the fact that now we look to the central bank like a Central Bank of Romania, like an independent central bank, which is the case of Federal Reserve System. That is, our national bank, according with the law, is not subordinated to the finance ministry. Is subordinated to the parliament. Then the monetary policy is a relatively independent policy of all the political forces. This is the comparison I have done. That from this point of view, we look, when we drafted the laws, we look to the Federal Reserve System in America and to the Bundesbank, which seems to me that they are the most independent central banks in the world. These are the comparison. The other aspect is that you are right, up to now, the largest part of our banking system is still a state banking system. But after the December events in Romania appeared 8 private banks. At the same time, the former state banks were converting from pure state banks in stock companies. And now, being stock companies, they started to be privatized. How far and how fast? This is another question, but I'm sure that also the former state banks will be privatized in the future.
From what countries is Romania now receiving aid?
From the financial point of view, the only loan we received up to now was from International Monetary Fund. From the commercial point of view, we've got some credit lines mainly from the Western European countries, France, Spain, Germany.
And that's credit, not cash?
They are commercial credits, exactly. They are not financial credits.
Alexandria, Virginia is next. Go ahead, please.
Good evening. I wanted to ask the governor what he is doing to attract American businesses to come to Romania, because it is my understanding that Romania really will be the place in Eastern Europe for business, and that the country will really get out of its 40 years of depression. How can he encourage American businesses to come to Romania?
The most encouraging elements for the American businessmen to come in Romania is to have a market economy in Romania. And particularly in my field, working and functional banking system, a modern banking system, a market banking system, and a convertible currency will be the most encouraging signs. Also, we passed a very liberal investment law in April this year. My point is that this is one of the most liberal in Eastern Europe. Of course, to encourage the American businessmen to come in Romania is necessary in the same time to promote the better image of Romania in American media. to say that my country has a lot of assets and there are a lot of good investments and attraction in my country. Let me count some of them. That's first of all, perhaps Romania has the greatest agriculture potential in that part of the world. Secondly, we still have some mineral resources like oil and natural gas. Thirdly, the labor force is relatively educated, relatively skilled, and is cheap. Fourth, we have no foreign debt, which is also, I can say, an asset, that we don't have a real financial burden. And fifth, there are a lot of industrial capacity. In fact, the disease of the Romanian economy is not underdevelopment, is overdevelopment, oversizing of the country. And from this point of view, we don't need very huge investments. We need investment mainly in good management, in the good technology, and also in the skilling, in the training the people to work with the market rules.
Oceanside, California.
Yes. Hello. My question is to the Minister of the Bank of Romania. I'm a first-generation American whose parents came from Romania, and I've traveled to Romania several times and obviously speak the language and what have you. My question to the gentleman is, how does he seriously think that he can get any help from the United States or the Western nations when his country has not implemented political reforms necessary? If we take a country like Czechoslovakia, Poland, or Hungary, they've gone much further in that direction. How can we really help Romania in that direction when they haven't implemented all of the reforms necessary?
I can, yeah.
He's off. Go ahead.
Okay. I can say that, first of all, it's necessary to understand the peculiarities of the Romanian transition to the market economy. We started the last in Eastern European countries. We started from the real dictatorship. And what's happened is perhaps the history will be rewritten. I cannot explain quite now in a few words. In the 80s, when all the former Eastern European countries moved towards a more market economy, towards a more democracy, Ceausescu moved in the opposite direction. And this created these peculiarities. Of course, it's our failure because we didn't succeed to promote our peculiarities in the American public, in the American political circles. Secondly, what we need is of course, to get some financial aid. For example, this jump towards convertibility is necessary to be supported by a stabilization fund. Without this stabilization fund, the move towards convertibility will be very dangerous and very risky. In fact, all the reform program is at risk if we will not have enough financing, enough reserves. And thirdly, is necessary, of course, to normalize relations between Romania and the United States, and for this is necessary to normalizing, meaning the granting of MFN, that is the most favored nation clause for the Romania, which now we lack.
And I think the caller's point was that in mentioning political reforms, that Romania ought to move toward a more democratic form than it now has. And rephrasing his question, is Romania moving toward democratic reforms such that the United States would be more forthcoming with aid?
I do believe that we are moving in that direction. I do believe in this, and there is a whole generation of Romanians, to say, which are fighting for this movement and to make this introduction of democratic rules in the country. But it's not at all easy.
As a chief financial policymaker for Romania, do you believe that Romania has any expectation of getting, for example, most favored nation status vis-a-vis the United States, unless there is some movement toward democracy?
No, I don't believe. If the United States is not convinced that Romania is moving towards a market economy and a democracy, I don't believe we will be granted the MFN.
Chelmsford, Massachusetts. Go ahead, please.
Yes. My question is, what is the official Romanian view on the events in Moldavia and North Bukovina in the Soviet Union? And is there any thought of possible territorial claims and maybe reunification?
The problem of Moldavia and North Bukovina is a historical problem. And you know, in Europe there are a lot of historical problems. Sometimes the history complicates a lot the life of the country. Actually, they are living Romanians. That is no difference. Perhaps the accent between an American living in Boston and an American living in Texas is much more than the difference in accent between the Moldavian and the Romanian living in Bucharest. That it's very clear they are living Romanians. But you know, there are a lot of historical elements is necessary that all this movement for a new Europe to be in a peaceful manner, and we consider this in a specific way.
New York City, go ahead.
Yes, I too was born in Romania, although I spent most of my life in the U.S. And the question I have is regarding democracy and market economy. We had to donate our house to the Romanian government. We were forced to donate our house to the Romanian government when we left Romania legally. Now, I've been trying to get it back. Apparently, there's a law that allows it. Nobody in any of the Romanian embassies around the world had any information regarding that. It's only been a 2-month window that you can do this. How can you add credibility that Romania is actually going towards a market economy and towards democracy?
So I can say that this is our big failure. That is the lack of communication. That's no professionalism in working with the media, and perhaps quite for me here, I'm not familiar with being in the studio and trying to answer to all these questions. I don't like to explain what is the reasons of this. It was first of all because the country was isolated from the world, and we're not, accustomed with all this modern media. This is one aspect. The second is that in the country, I can say there are the word scarcity in Romania is the scarcity of skilled people, including in the media, including that is for communication. That what you said is perfectly right, and what I can try to do, that is from the National Bank, is to improve the information about Romania. And we started quite now, it's only 1 week old, we started to have a economic letter about the Romania, and this will be passed through the embassy and to all the officials all around the world.
What advice would you give him if he wanted to find out the facts of that law that would perhaps allow him to get the family homestead back? Is there a particular agency within Romania that he should be dealing?
This was a debated aspect, both in the parliament and in the cabinet, in the government, and up to now it was not established exactly what will be the solution for this.
Woodbury, Minnesota. Go ahead, please.
Hi, this is Marin Dinka.
Oh.
I'm originally from Romania. I'm an American citizen, and I have a question for Mr. Murgur Isarescu. If Romania needs investment from United States, I know thousands of Romanians who are very well-to-do here, and they would like to invest in Romania, but even Romanian citizens living abroad are not allowed to own property in Romania. How can you attract investment when there is very little that they can hope for?
The problem of property in Romania will be solved, and I guess this will be solved in this summer. That remain one unsolved problem. It was necessary to solve, first of all, or to pass the foreign investment law, and after this to have this privatization law. There are a debate among the lawyers that actually in Romania there are still valid Napoleonic codes, that's commercial code and civil code. And from this point of view, they said that it's necessary to have another property law. Other side said that just to be sure that the property in Romania is a very clear matter, it's necessary to have a property law, a new property law. But anyway, in this summer, this problem of the property for Romanians and for the foreigners will be solved.
Governor, we have a call from Zimbabwe. Caller, where in Zimbabwe are you calling from?
Gwanda in Zimbabwe.
All right, go ahead, sir.
Right. It strikes me, I mean, I've been listening to this conversation for the last 20 minutes or so, and it strikes me that a lot of the conversation has to do with American aid. I happen to utilize Romanian tractors, which were part of a package that came into Zimbabwe. And although they are not really fantastic tractors, they have got 4 wheels and they do go. Why doesn't Romania follow an aggressive marketing policy with the goods that they produce into countries like this? In fact, as a matter of fact, why doesn't America also do the same? Because all we see here are Japanese stuff.
Okay.
I mean, to me, that you just don't really try and market what you do have, and when you can produce a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of countries that are like Zimbabwe.
All right, sir, thank you very much.
I didn't catch exactly what was the clue of the question about.
Well, he's asking, he's already got some tractors that he uses from your country, and he wonders, instead of relying on, say, aid from the United States or from other Eastern or other European countries, why not use an aggressive marketing of products that you already have?
Yes, the problem is that actually what we need now is, you know, to put in other words, the transition to a market economy needs some fuel, some financial support, and the aid is for this transition. Actually, we are producing tractors. I can say that we can export tractors. We can be aggressive in marketing tractors in different countries. But from one side, it's necessary to get some financial assistance to make the essential imports for the economy and to take off the production. And secondly, you know, tractors, like any other equipment, usually are sold on credit. And actually appear this gap between the moment when we get the cash, that is the money, the moment when it's necessary to start the production. But being aggressive in our export policy, it's good advice, and we are now preparing for good marketing policy.
Windmore, Pennsylvania. Go ahead, please.
Yes. How can Romania expect help from the West, from the United States, investment, while they are rehabilitating the fascist dictator Antonescu?
I cannot say it's a rehabilitation. It's still a debate in the press. You know, there are different views about the personality of Marshal Antonescu, and I cannot say it's a rehabilitation quite now. It's only a debate between different fractions of the Romanian population, and is the fact that about this area, about the period of the 40s, the communists said a lot of stories, and now it's necessary to know exactly what was the reality in that period.
Governor, this happens to be the article in the New York Times picturing the former leader of Romania that some of our callers had referred to. I know you haven't seen it, but it was mentioned enough times we thought we'd show it to the audience. Rising verbal attacks shake Romania's Jews, and the picture is of Antonescu, pardon me, Ion Antonescu, and he's the former leader of Romania. Dallas, Texas is next. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
You're on the air, sir.
Yes, I'm calling from Texas. I'm originally from Romania. I'm an American citizen, and I still don't think that the Romanians from Chicago, Boston, cannot communicate very well with those in Texas. If that's so, how can I understand why I can understand Mr. Mugur then? But anyway, I talked last week with some friends in Romania, and what they told me, they said that the Romanians are not ready for a market economy. They don't have that mentality of private property. And I would like Mr. Mugur to comment on that. And also, since there is not a market structure yet, the most favored nation status will support that old structure. So what do they have? Do they have a plan? Obviously, U.S. Is not impressed yet, because I noticed that Vice President visited Eastern Europe and he avoided Romania or missed it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, perhaps I exaggerated, of course. What I try to say, then, is that the difference in the language between Moldavians and the Romanians were very, very thin. And regarding the mentality of the Romanians for the market economy, you are perfectly right. You know, the mentality is perhaps the most difficult element which can be changed. That is, after nearly half a century, 40 years of communism, changing a mentality and creating the mentality for the market economy will take some time. It's necessary, first of all, for an educational effort. It's necessary, in the same time, to accustom people with the new rules, to accustom people with the risks. Actually, in my country, it was the population was not accustomed getting the risk of a business, getting the risk of unemployment. That in this field we are perfectly right. Regarding the other element that the U.S. Officials are not convinced that we are moving towards a market economy, this is our failure. That is necessary to enforce our effort and to present better what's happened in Romania and what changes happen in Romania.
Quickly, last call for Governor Mugur Isarescu, Richmond, Virginia. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, Governor. I'm speaking from Richmond, Virginia, and I'm a European, and I love the Romanian people very, very much indeed. But I do not understand one thing, that knowing that all over the world now is a recession.
Caller, we have 15 seconds. 15 seconds, caller.
And you think that you can solve the problem of the Romanians telling all over the world that you have these problems with economy, etc. I am interested in one thing. How do you convince, first of all, your own people to make them again enthusiastic? And
okay, that'll have to do. You've got a few seconds. Governor?
That's why, frankly, I didn't catch the clue of the question.
How do you make the Romanians enthusiastic for a new market economy?
This will be very difficult. This will be very difficult. I have no more comment. It's to be enthusiastic about the market economy, of course, is first of all to present very well what is the market economy, to say exactly that this is the sole alternative for an efficient economy, to convince them this is the sole alternative, and to say that the central planning was a real failure. That's the first element.
We're out of time. Governor Mugur Isarescu, thank you for being here. We appreciate your time.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks to our audience for watching. Thanks for your calls. Have a good evening.
A note to join us tomorrow evening for several viewer call-in programs from the site of the Republican National Committee Summer Meeting in Houston, Texas. Note to join us tomorrow evening for several viewer call-in programs from the site of the Republican National Committee Summer Meeting in Houston, Texas. You will have an opportunity to talk with Clayton Yiter, chairman of the RNC, and Congressman Guy Vanderjack of Michigan, chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee. Those live call-in programs begin Friday night at 6 Eastern Time. Coming up shortly, remarks by Boris Yeltsin, the newly elected president of the Russian Republic. They follow a short break for a look at the schedule.